Colonel James C. Harding is one of the most highly decorated Air Force officers in history. He is a command pilot with nearly 5,000 hours of military single-engine flying time and a master parachutist with 69 jumps. Colonel Harding was shot down by an SA-7 surface-to-air missile while directing a rescue mission in Vietnam in 1972. United States Army helicopters rescued him after he successfully evaded North Vietnamese troops. After retiring from active service in 1979, Colonel Harding worked on the Air Force Junior ROTC program and also served as an advisor to the Royal Saudi Air Force. He more fully retired in 1998 to become a citrus tree farmer. Colonel James Harding, it is my privilege to welcome you to the Global Freedom Report. How are you, sir?
Very good, thank you. And the United States of America is the greatest country in the world.
All right. I have to say, I noticed that you've done 69 jumps. I had a friend many years ago, and he did jumping more for fun in the experience. It wasn't military or anything. But the fourth time he ever went up, his parachute failed to open. Obviously, he lived to tell the story and everything. But have you ever had an experience when your parachute failed to open, either in active duty or in training?
No, thankfully my parachute's always opened, and I thank the Lord for that, but I also thank the guy that does the parachute packing and the people who manufactured the aircraft that has the ejection system in it that I had to use this last time.
Have you ever, did you ever have a situation maybe where you were conducting a training and one of your students was going up and the parachute didn't open or anything like that?
No, I've been very, very fortunate.
Wow.
I worked very closely with the Army and then later on with the Air Force people in the Air Force. They were going through parachutist training, and all of them were able to get their chutes to working perfectly every time. But we always carried a reserve parachute just in case the main chute didn't open. So we were prepared, and the odds of both of them not working were very, very slim.
Oh, absolutely. I just would imagine in that one moment between the first and the second, probably your stomach drops out from under you when you see that happen or when you feel that happen. Not to resurrect any traumatic memories, but if you can, would you tell us something of what it was like to be shot down in enemy territory in North Vietnam?
Well, actually, it was in South Vietnam. It was in 1972 after the American troops had pretty much all left Vietnam. And the mission I was on was a rescue mission for a forward air controller who had been shot down. He was working with a couple of Army advisors that were working with the Republic of Vietnam Army troops that were trying to ward off an invasion from North Vietnam. That invasion entailed about 40,000 North Vietnamese military, and they had overrun the place where the Army advisors were working. So what had happened is I had sent 2 aircraft in the old A-1 Skyraider we used to kind of reconnoiter the area to bring in rescue. One of them got shot down, so I sent 2 more in. One of them got shot down. So I went in with a wingman, and within 45 minutes of arriving, both of us had been shot down. So, yes, it was a traumatic experience, but as I was coming down in my parachute, obviously in the area where these guys were, they were actually shooting at me in the parachute, so I had to do a lot of juggling around with the risers, and I was very glad that I'd taken that parachute training because that was my 69th jump, and I was pretty handy with a chute at that time. But by the time I got on the ground, I was really upset, and I was determined I wasn't going to be captured. So I had to kill a few of them before I could get it where an Army helicopter could actually come in and pick us up. My wingman and I'd pick us up.
And yeah, as I understand it, you evaded all the enemy soldiers, and you managed not only to save yourself, but to save your wingman as well. And that was your final jump. Oh, that's got to be quite a memory.
Yes, it is quite a memory.
Wow, that's really something. You are with Veteran Defenders of America. Can you tell us something about the organization and its mission?
I'll be glad to. And if anybody is interested in finding out more about it, they can go to veterandefenders.org, that's O-R-G, and that will not only show you about our mission and what you need to do to join the organization, but on the front page it will show you the Patriots Call to Action 11-11-11, which is our Veterans Day March on Washington, D.C., and the Declaration to Restore the Constitutional Republic. And
you ruined my surprise. I was going to give it a special intro in my next question.
Okay, forget that part.
But no, that's okay. That part. Please keep telling them.
But what I want to get across to people is Veteran Defenders of America is an organization started by veterans to help veterans. It's a part of the 26 million veterans that are in the United States of America. Think about that, 26 million. We need to get them organized so that they can take care of themselves, their family, and their friends, and that's what we've decided to do. About 2 years ago, we started the organization in Jackson, Tennessee, and it's now spread throughout the United States and some foreign countries. And the idea behind it is to organize at the grassroots level, the lowest level. There's no support from any outside organization or from the U.S. government. It's strictly supported from within. We want the veterans to get together in their areas to be able to transmit back and forth the information that they've learned in the military to be able to take care of themselves as well as their friends and family in the local area. We want them to work with the local sheriffs in case he needs help in emergencies. And those emergencies can be either natural or man-made. A good example of how this works is the last flood we had here in Tennessee about a year and a half ago. The local sheriff sent his deputies out to low water crossings before they went underwater. He was able to be proactive and keep people from getting into danger. That's the kind of thing Veteran Defenders wants to do, to be organized as a group to help our friends and neighbors so that if we have a disaster of any kind, we would be there to help them. At this point, though, what we want to do is we want to try to get our government turned back around. So I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, this is an amazing document. And folks, just to let you know, and Colonel Harding, when we're done here, this weekend, when I put up my links on my website, I will have a link to Veteran Defenders, so it'll permanently stay on our website for people who, for any reason, missed it, but it's veterandefenders.org, and there's a document up there called A Declaration to Restore the Constitutional Republic. So the first question is, what happened to it? When and how did the Constitutional Republic go away?
Well, what happened is for about the last 100 years, it's been slowly bleeding away as we've seen the deterioration of the three branches of government, the executive, the judicial, and the legislative. And what has happened in the last 3 or 4 years is the executive branch has just about neutered the judicial branch by appointing liberal judges which are not following the Constitution but are making up laws as they go, and a legislative branch which has been cowed by the executive branch with him telling them pass this bill, and they have decided to just kind of power back and not do anything. We are trying to have a march to Washington, D.C. We get a couple of million people up there that will show our legislative branch, come on, guys, get with it. It's time to get back to doing what you're supposed to do, which is following the edicts of the Constitution and representing the people who elected you to office. Now, not following what someone up here in Washington is telling you to do.
Now, let me say up to this point, okay, with all due respect, that what you folks are hearing, you've heard before. You've heard people talk about the necessity of restoring the republic. You've heard people on this show talk about, how the government has been violating the rights and all of this. And so up to this point, there's nothing new. But I want to tell you something. I have not seen a document such as this yet in clear and unquestioned language. They not only identify and establish that there are abuses of and usurpations constituted in violations of every article of the organic Constitution and every article of the Bill of Rights. But there's a demand in here. And the demand is is demanding the immediate and unconditional orderly resignation of, and they start with Obama and then Biden, and then there's this entire laundry list. You're very serious about what you're doing with this declaration. This does not look like just another, platitude against too big government.
Well, and it's not. What we are demanding is that we get rid of those people who have destroyed our Constitution as it was written and it was thought of by our founding fathers. We must get rid of this present group of people before the end of this term. We cannot allow it to come to a re-election process, because if that happens, that means that everything that has passed in this last 4 years will stand, and it will become a precedent for future generations. That means they can bring anybody in from any country in the world and put them in there as president, and they can run our country. We need to get away from that. We are a sovereign nation. We want citizens, legal citizens of the United States, to be in our Congress, in our president, and in our Supreme Court, and that's the only way we're going to accept it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, as an example, it's kind of like allowing the next play to begin in a football game before the replay has started. If you don't do the replay, if you don't check the play, and the next play starts, oh well, too bad, you just got to live with it. It's the same basic kind of thing. You have taken an oath to defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. So have all veterans. From what your organization has declared, there is a clear domestic enemy within our midst. What do you personally and the organization as a whole recommend be done about that enemy? Now, let me just, for the sake of the discussion, assume that despite the demands, these people are not going to resign.
Then obviously the next step is for us to, first of all, meet with the Congress as representatives from each of the groups. And let me throw in one other organization here real quickly, and that is the United States Patriots Union. You can go to that website also. Obviously, Veteran Defenders is for veterans, but if you're not a veteran, you can also join this effort by going to patriotsunion.org. That's O-R-G. That's patriotsunion.org. There, anybody can sign up to be a part of this movement, even though you are not a veteran. And we know that there are an awful lot of patriots out there in our country. These are warriors, not wimps. These are people who are dedicated to making sure our country continues. Now, as I started to say, the first step would obviously be to meet with Congress and see if they are willing to take up this mantle to start the impeachment proceedings if resignation does not come. If they are not willing, then we will have to go back and regroup again and see what other actions we can take. But remember, all of these actions are allowed for by our Constitution. Our founding fathers knew there would be times like these in history, and they allowed for this by the way the Constitution is written. So we are legal. Everything we are doing is legal. We are peaceful. In fact, we published a code of conduct for this call to action that we expect all the members of not only the Veteran Defenders but Patriots Union to follow when they go either to the state capitals or Washington, D.C. But essentially, we're not going to be a bunch of pigs like what we've seen in the Wall Street occupation, but we will leave that place as clean as we found it. We will not be confrontational. We're going up there as a peaceful demonstration of a trial by public opinion, realizing that the more people we have, the more significant this trial will be.
Would you comment on, you mentioned the Occupy protests, and I'd like your comment on the recent critical injury of Marine Scott Olson by what can only be described as thug cop, or the recent killing of a Marine by Arizona SWAT team thugs in what need not have been a violent interaction in the first place. Could you comment on this rash of essentially killings of veterans?
Well, I'm not privy to all the information that goes on there, but all I know is from my own experience with the veterans that I know, the large majority of them, in fact, I would say the overwhelming majority of them, when they are someplace for either a Tea Party type demonstration or something like we're doing, they're very well mannered.
Oh, yes.
Follow the rules.
Oh, yes.
They follow the rules. And
Scott Olson was very peaceful, very well mannered, and somebody decided to I think it was a flare gun or something of that sort. It was not a firearm, but they basically shot him in the head with it, and they thought he was going to die. He was in critical condition. His brain has swelling. He still can't talk. It looks like he doesn't have serious brain damage, though, beyond that, up to this point. But he didn't do anything. And that's why I call them thug police, because in this case, I think the cops were thugs. Because they put Maureen in the hospital. And, I mean, what do you do when you want to keep things peaceful, and your own people are being brutalized by the government?
Well, this is something it's very detrimental to the good law and order of our country, and we're hoping that we don't face this when we go to Washington. We've already been talking with the Park Police up in Washington, D.C. We've talked to them extensively and told them what we plan to do, and so far they've been extremely cooperative. I think one of the problems we run into is when we have these demonstrations that are not well controlled by the people themselves, we get into an opportunity for these union groups to become involved in them and start a ruckus of some kind, on purpose, by the way. And if you'll notice that this whole thing throughout the United States has been very, very well organized. Obviously, a lot of the funding has come from George Soros, and their attempt is to try to discredit the country, discredit our law enforcement. They're putting a terrible strain on the resources of each of these cities where they're doing that. And in fact, they're not exercising their First Amendment rights. They're depriving every other citizen of their normal rights to go about their lives in an orderly manner. So, to me, I think what's happened is this small group of people has put such a strain on our police force that sometimes they act irrationally.
Well, I would hope. I'm going to be a skeptic on it. I would hope that what you're saying is right, but I've seen too many situations, not excluding the Scott Olson situation, where there are reports that the whole incident started because a police officer threw an egg at another police officer, an agent provocateur type. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I was not there, but when I hear reports like that, I get a little bit concerned that at some point there may be a conflict between our veterans and our police. Is there any kind of protocol among veteran officers for resistance to unlawful government, to police state tactics and things like that? I don't know, trying to disarm the population or anything of that sort?
Well, the protocol that we will be adhering to on this particular gathering is that we are totally non-confrontational. In fact, we have asked all of our people to back away from any kind of confrontation, because if we cannot get our message across peacefully, in this case, then we know we've got another more serious problem. And that's when we're going to have to fall back and regroup and decide what the next step is going to be.
Pardon me, Colonel, I really appreciate that, and I'm not trying to provoke a violent situation here, okay? But what I'm curious at, if you're there doing a peaceful protest, and there are others there as well, I would assume that anyone can participate in the protest, and there are others there as well, and something happens, and you see right in front of you a bunch of Capitol Police doing what apparently seems to be violating the rights of those protesters. Is there some kind of protocol where you would step in and say you can't do this, or you just back away because it's getting physical?
That would be the option that we would take in this particular case, and that would be to back away from it. They are the local law enforcement officers, and if they're deciding to do something like that, then obviously someplace has been something that either instigated that or we have somebody that's infiltrated their ranks and caused this kind of a problem. And that's always a possibility. But in our case, what we are trying to do is to set an example of how we can follow the Constitution, those protocols set up by our Constitution, and make the changes that are necessary to bring our country back on track again.
All right. Now, November 11th, that's next Friday in Washington. Is there a particular, objective here? Are you going to, on the steps of the White House or something, present the Declaration to restore the constitutional republic, or is there some kind of ultimate objective to the march?
Yes, there is an objective, and the objective is simply, as I said earlier, to have a trial by public opinion to show the members of Congress and to the White House, and of course to the Supreme Court, that we are serious about our demands on the government. Copies of this declaration have already been delivered to all the members of Congress, to the executive branch, and the judicial branch. It's also, by the way, been delivered to every news media and all the talk show hosts throughout the United States, including Glenn Beck, Sean Hannity, Bill O'Reilly, Rush Limbaugh, all of these people. It has been delivered to them. And, of course, my biggest concern right now is where are they? My concern is also where are all the veterans? We fought hard in all these wars, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and now the Middle East. And if we're going to stand by and allow our country to go down the tubes, then I have a very, very bad feeling about what our veterans really, really represent. So I'm calling on all of our veterans, not only just veterans, but every patriot to get out there and show everybody in the world that we can peacefully change our government by demanding and exacting a resignation from those who have gone away from our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution.
And you pointed out earlier there are 26 million veterans. That's quite an army, folks. You get 26 million, you get half those people together and everything. You've got an army. I mean, bigger than the Chinese army. And you don't need all those people to do it, but you've got a whole pool, 26 million people. Now, let me ask, was I correct? Can anyone participate in this march? Is this
Anybody can. That's correct. Anybody can, and we're looking for patriots. We're looking for guys that ride motorcycles, guys that ride horses, guys that run around in RVs. It doesn't make any difference. Truck drivers. Obviously, the more people we can get there, the better. I would love to see the whole Washington, D.C. area totally flooded by some of these independent truck drivers. Just shut down the whole nation's capital and let them realize that we are serious about our demands, that we get back on track in the Constitution of our country.
Okay, how do people, if people say, hey, yeah, I want to be a part of that, now what? Where do they go? What do they do?
0600 hours. That's 6 o'clock in the morning at the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C. At that time, we're going to start working together, what we call a muster of trying to gather the folks together. And obviously, there are other functions going on in Washington, D.C. at that same time. At Arlington Cemetery, at the different memorials, especially the Vietnam Memorial. And so what we want to do is join together all of those people to go to each of those places. And the main thing is to have enough people there that it will flood that whole area more than they had at the Tea Party gathering where they had over 2 million people. We need about 6 million people up there. We'll let them know that, yes, this is a serious, serious problem, and we have to solve it. We cannot wait to go into another election cycle.
And I'm on the same page with you on that. So can people get the information they need from veterandefenders.org or from patriotsunion.org or from both of them?
Yes, they can. And it even has information of how you can get in touch with bus companies to charter buses and so on.
Oh, fantastic. Excellent. So that's November 11th. That's next Friday, not tomorrow, a week from tomorrow in Washington, folks. Okay, get yourselves there. You tell me what you have going on that's more important? There better be nothing. My guest has been Colonel James C. Harding. Oh, let me ask you one last thing. Beyond the march, if people want to get really actively involved in this type of activity, obviously Veteran Defenders is there for veterans, but people who aren't veterans, but who really want to get involved, what do you suggest?
I would suggest the United States Patriot Union. That's the other website. That's patriotunion.org. We have about 6 different branches of the Patriots Union to handle just about any kind of a situation. We have a legal branch. We have a legislative branch. This is a group that helped defend Lieutenant Colonel Lakin when he was fighting against the president.
Oh yeah.
And so this is the kind of thing that they do.
Excellent.
In all sorts of different ways. They are able to put together documents.
Colonel, forgive me. I need to cut you off because we're out of time. I want to make sure I give that out again to people. You got 2 websites: www.veterandefenders.org and patriotsunion.org. We'll have both sites up on our website. Colonel Harding, the best of fortune with the march. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you very much for having us on. God bless America.